the agenda. Yolanda moves, Kathy seconds. All those in favor?
I just wanted to amend the agenda.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
It says that there will be a meeting. The next meeting will be, July 17th.
Yes.
I'm just thinking we should amend that to September.
So our normal meeting process is we wouldn't meet in July and August. However, that's possible. I can call the chair can call one if it's necessary, and we can, based on our discussions tonight, we can decide whether that will be necessary going forward. So that's fine. So,
yeah, that was my only thing.
Okay. So is the movers and seconders okay with that? Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interests? None noted. Minutes to the previous meeting. Anybody wish to move those? Yolanda moves them. Bill seconds them. Are there any questions or issues with the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carried. So, business arising from the minutes. I did want to make note that there was some conversation at council, and a decision had been made with regards to the adoption of the OPP billing or costing proposal. The council ratified the bylaw last night. That is a requirement in order to submit that contract back to the OPP. So once that has reached the OPP offices, the process of transition will begin. There's a number of steps still to go. One being the OCPC that still needs to be. The OPP deal with that. The conversation that I was told at the meeting is that we really have no. There's a meeting, but they have dealt with that. The concern was that they wanted to make sure all of our agreements were up to date. So I don't know what that means, but we'll get future.
Pretty sure the municipality has to request it.
So again, that might be one of the steps that they help us through, or whatever that case may be. But I don't know what that looks like.
Amherstburg just went through that. Mind you, they were with the Windsor Police. They're disbanding to go to the Windsor Police, and they sent their letter back in May to OCPC to request a hearing.
Okay.
And the OCPC got back to them this month, and their hearing date is in July. So I'm pretty sure it's the municipal council that.
And that might be the OPP didn't mention. They mentioned steps, but they didn't mention what the steps were. They just said once we get the bylaw and the formal signing, then they will communicate through council and through the North Huron Police Services Board about what those steps would be and what we will have to do in order to. There will be transition meetings with the board. As well as the association, so that everybody's going to understand what the process is and all the legality with regards to disbanding and all that type of stuff. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not. We may or may not need a meeting in July, depending on the process and the timing of some of those decisions. I suspect August we probably will need something, but until we know anything more, any information comes from the OPP, I will make sure I keep the board up to date on what that looks like. But right now, there's been nothing but ratification of the bylaw by council that suggests that they accept the OPP costing as was presented. Okay, so I thought that was. Based on the conversations from this board and the pushback that we were back and forth. one of the things that we'll talk about is in the police chief's report about the hiring practice. I think the board needs to decide whether what the need is at this point, knowing where we're going or knowing what the council has decided. So we can chat about that more at the chief's report. So okay, so we'll move on to the chief's report. Chief.
Great. So let me call it up here. Month of May, we had 165 calls, which is down from 178 last year. 3 of the calls that we handled were assisting the OPP. I've attached the crime statistics, as I always do. The OACP Zone 5 meeting was held in Cobble Beach. I had said Owen Sound because I thought they were hosting it. We were in Cobble Beach, which is just outside of Owen Sound. And I attended the annual general meeting of the OACP in Huntsville from the 10th to the 13th of June. Nothing really pertinent to our board at either one of those meetings from my aspect. The standard field sobriety testing training is still going on. We have 4 frontline officers who've completed the course and are qualified. So 2 more to go. So that we'll be at 100% for that. We are commencing the interview phase of the application process. We're in that process right now, pending the outcome of this evening. And I do have issues for in-camera.
So probably should just continue to the conversation, but anyway, when you say you're commencing, have you physically done any interviews at this point? You have. Was there any questions from any of the applicants about the status of the force?
Oh, for sure. And as we've alluded to just prior, although council's decided to go to the OPP, we've done that route before with this service, and the OCPC, or OCOPS at the time, decided that to remain with the Wingham Police, and they're the ones that have the final say. But I think we need to be prepared regardless of what council has decided. Like, my concern is that we don't proceed with hiring like we planned. The OCPC hearing is not till September or October, based on 6 months down the road that just went through with Amherstburg, virtually by the time they make their decision. We could be looking at, if they say, yes, you're going, that's fine. If they say, no, you're staying, then we're behind the 8 ball in meeting your MOU with the association.
So what happens if they say that we are going to OPP and we've made those hires? Do those guys have an opportunity to get on with the OPP, or are they SOL?
I don't know.
So the understanding that I got is that all of the individuals who are on the service still have to apply.
That's right.
So they still have to apply to the OPP. There's nothing
No
guaranteed.
And these guys are new recruits, so they're at the bottom, so they could essentially apply to OPP and go anywhere.
Well, they can apply to the OPP today. They just chose to apply to us as opposed to the OPP. Maybe they've applied to the OPP too. Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kathy?
But they won't have attended police college yet, so they won't, right?
Well, they would if we hired them. Our plan was to put them in police college by September.
So they will be a graduate by January.
Which would be about the time when like the transition would start happening, right?
There's That's the tenet of the
So
discussion.
if we hire them, and then can we hire them conditionally, saying that in the event that we go OPP, and you have to apply to the OPP, like how do we do that so that we're not having to pay them an exit as well? Or we can't do
You
that?
can't. There's nothing that would dictate. Now, there is a probationary period of any employment, which is
Right.
generally 3 months.
1 year.
1 year for our, so any probationary period would dictate to that.
That they could,
However, the caveat to that, the probationary period, what it states is the minute they are an association member, it qualifies under they would qualify under the disbandment approach. However, their buyout or their severance package would be very limited
right,
because it's 2 weeks for every year of service. Well, they haven't had a year of service, it would be prorated.
do you think anyone's gonna say yes?
So
Good job.
Don't know.
Yeah, actually, I do believe someone would.
You think so?
Yes.
I don't know that I would.
Well, if you've gone through police college at that point and been hired on as an officer, you especially if that's where your career choice is, then you have put your foot in the door and you have
I guess so.
maybe a limited amount of experience, but you have a bit of experience, and then therefore you can apply not only to the OPP but to different services that are hired. And so, and I'm not 100% sure what the OPP situation was, but I do recall maybe within the last couple of years they've been having quite a bit of hiring going on, just because that a lot of officers have been heading to retirement age. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that's the case.
Yeah, it's the case everywhere.
So I do believe we'll get someone. Unfortunately, it does put us in an awkward position, and I am curious to know what our obligations are to maybe a new hire. I mean, that's something maybe the board should investigate.
obligations in what sense?
Financially, obviously.
Well, the obligations, if you hire somebody, you pay them when they work. That's the obligation. And they would still, they're entitled to the same training that everybody else has until such time as the association or the service doesn't exist.
Would we be obligated to pay them 2 weeks severance though minimum? I mean, I do believe.
In the negotiated contract
Yeah.
with the association, which they would become members the minute they get hired, is 1 week is 2 weeks service for every year, or 2 weeks pay for every year of service. So they're not going to hit a year. If they're hired in September, they'd have to get to September to get a year.
That's correct. Yes.
So there will be a prorated amount that you'd have to pay them based on the contract, based on the negotiated contract, and that's the agreement that has been signed by the association and this board. So those are the obligations that you have under the agreement that you signed. And that's only ones that I know of.
Yeah, I'm just curious. For some reason, I have in my head that there might be an Ontario law that states that you might have to pay them 2 weeks. I don't know why that is, but I obviously I'm not an expert in this. So
the part of it is too is that you have, in essence, you have to give them notice. There's a provision that you have to give notice of severance, that their job is no longer. However, you can't give them notice until you know. So the intention is that once, and you can't, and technically we wouldn't know that until the hearing.
That's right.
So the minute the hearing happens, you have to give them, you have to then, the minute the hearing happens and the minute it's ratified that the service can move to the OPP, then a letter would have to be issued to each one of the officers stating, here's your notice that you will be terminated your employment effective whatever day.
Yep.
And then the provisions of the severance package part of the agreement in, but also there's a separate part of it, but making sure that we give them proper notice. You have to make sure you give proper notice. And that's the part where, because the municipality has $2.5 million in payroll, and they're technically they're an employee of the board, but they're paid to the municipality, the provisions would still exist. So there's lots of dates that have to happen before we can get to that point. But I understand. I never thought of it that way. The issue for me from an MOU discussion is it in the best interest of everybody to go through this process with the unknown of whether we are or we aren't. And my point is that the MOE, we made it very clear to them that if these are things that are out of our control, don't shoot us as the messenger. And again, I think we need to be a little frugal with the money that we're talking about here, only because we've budgeted that money to hire. If that money isn't needed to hire, that can help. That budget money can help with the one-time payout costs that we've been talking about. And therefore, we don't have this issue next year as much or at all. So I don't know. That's why I thought it would be best to bring it up here. And I think the chief has mentioned, like, we've started this interview process. Do we continue the interview process with the idea of hiring these 3 officers, knowing what we know, and which is very little until the OCPC hearing, or does the board wish to kind of delay it until and notify the association? I can notify the association that we're going to do this, and we're going to wait till the hearing. And then once we wait till the hearing, we will. What it sounds like to me, Chief, is that would delay it basically 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you wouldn't hire in the September age if the OCPC came back and said, no, you're keeping the service. You would hire in January. Those would be done in April. You'd hire in
The May course.
and they would be ready in September. So you're pushing it 6 months. So I will do what the board wishes. I just thought it would be best that the board have the discussion with the chief here. The chief has made his comments about the hiring. What's the board have talked about?
So
Kathy?
typically right now, we would send them off to college the 1st of September, and they would be our employees as of the 1st of September.
That's right.
And then the 1st of January, they would become 4th class officers under the association agreement.
The association agreement is 4th class to start.
Right. But then as of the 1st of January, we might not even be their employers.
I think the earliest it's going to be, from what I've been told by council or by the CAO and by the OPP, the earliest it can be is February.
It would be to their advantage because we've put them through college for 3 months. Their college would be paid for. We would be opening the door.
Well, they have to pay college for themselves.
They're paying the college themselves.
Yeah. $10,500, I think it is.
And they pay the college. We pay their
salary.
We pay their salary
while
they're there, and we pay their expenses while at college. I guess whatever the mileage rate was and whatever I think they get a per diem, I think it is at college, if I can remember the
I don't
agreement.
think that applies to recruit class.
Oh, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. You're right.
And what would be the OPP's take on us having these new employees?
Well, I know
What
the
would be
OPP, like years ago, they would take 1 for 1. Now they don't do that. They take what they need to perform the job. And you have to go through the hiring process. So they would be in the same boat as other officers in the service. They would apply. If they get hired, great. If they don't, then that's.
And under the proposal, they're allocating 7 officers.
Yeah.
Basically the equivalent of 7 full-time officers. So really, it's a crapshoot whether they would get through or not. But again, like Bill said, they're getting the benefit of going, being hired for 3 months and getting it through police college. And now they've got the opportunity that they can put on their resume that they've been through police college. They can go anywhere they want. It's a hard decision for the board here, what is in the best interest of the service. Joan?
What we haven't talked about is the health and safety of our officers, and our memorandum of understanding had really a lot to do with that, and the reason for hiring was so that there could be 2 officers on 24 hours a day. And if we postpone that, just being devil's advocate here, if we postpone that,
But the first we could implement that anyway is January 1st.
yeah. that
Because
them
they have
actually
to be
being
in
on.
college for 3 months.
No, I totally get it. But are we in effect keeping the terms of our memorandum of understanding if we delay? And I can see it from both ways. I don't know why we would delay, but I'm saying,
They come back.
where does that put us with the police association if we've negotiated in good faith and then we're going, oh, delay? So putting that out there.
So I think we've got a fairly good relationship so far with the association in the
Mhm.
sense that we've been very open and honest with the discussion about having the 2 officers on duty full time, like for every shift. The downside of this is that, you know, and I have to, council's put us in this position, to be quite frank about the discussion. Council put us in this position because if the decision was made back in March to do what we are doing now, we would be 3 months quick down the road where we may have already been hired. We may have already been hiring at this point. And the question then becomes, is it the right idea? So we specifically mentioned in the memorandum that we've chatted about this with Mark and them, is that if it's under our control, if it's in our control, we will do what we can to ensure that it's, but if it's money or resources or something to that effect that the board doesn't really have control of it, don't cause us grief because of this issue. And again, if it's really only talking about, my question is, we're delaying it 3 months, I guess, where we could go back to Mark and the association to say is, are you okay with that delay? And if you're not, then we need to reconvene. We need to retalk. Or we have the discussion that the chief continues until such time as I get a hold of the association to say to them, if this gets pushed to 3 months, are you okay with that?
So how many officers would we be sending in September?
3.
3 times 3 months' salary. Like, look at the cost savings financially to taxpayers if we didn't send those officers off to college if we don't need them. Wouldn't it be better to have you two have a meeting with the association and get their input?
I can have the conversation with Mark. Like I can give him a call and chat with him to say, you know, this is what technically that rate. And here's the caveat though. I'm not sure we have to be careful about saying we're going to save the taxpayer that money, because that salary that we aren't paying for is going to go right to the closing costs of the span, which there's going to be some.
Right.
So we're not taxing the taxpayer any more than what we should. I look at it too from the perspective that if we've been very adamant, at least I have been as a counselor, about this decision to move, if it's now all of a sudden communicated that the board is now hiring, what does that look like? Like, what ramifications or backlash is the board and the association going to take because of that? I don't know. I don't know if the association's okay with that. I understand where the association would say, we just want what we want from our memorandum of understanding. That's all we've ever asked for. But I think we've heard from the association, they don't want to hear the grief. They came here and said, it's not our decision to do this, so don't have people call us. But I think the picture of us hiring for potentially 6 months is not a good look in my mind. Yolanda?
So maybe we should just do what Kathy suggested, that you two sit down with Mark and have a discussion, say, this is what we're faced with. What do you guys think? Can we postpone this for 6 months? And just see where it goes until we know what's said. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having that conversation, and then based on what they say, we move forward. Because, I mean, I guess we could make a decision here, but we should really ask their opinion first before we decide on what.
Well, I guess the question is though, this is why we only have a meeting. We have the meeting tonight.
If we have to call another one, we have to call another one.
I get it. I get it. But so I'm fine with whatever the board decides. If the board decides that's what they wish us to do, then I'll.
And he is away until next week. He's on course.
So can't talk to him until next week anyways.
We talk to him when he's back. We've got time.
I don't disagree. I'm just want to make sure that we're not.
I think we
Not
worked
quick.
really hard to build a good relationship with them, and I think we really have a duty to talk to them.
Yep.
And not just, I mean, we've been forced into a really, between a rock and a hard place by council, flip-flopping, and we negotiated in good faith based on a decision that was made, and then it got changed, and I think we should talk to them.
Okay.
I agree.
So the consensus is I'll set up a meeting with Mark. Me and Joan will set up with Mark and Murray. And at this point, the chief is to. So let me be clear. The chief is to continue the process until he's told otherwise. Or is he stopping until he's told by us that to continue? We need to get this clear to give him direction. So what is the direction?
I have a few questions, and so you're in the interview process. Have you interviewed everyone you want to interview?
No, we have 2 more appointments for tomorrow and 4, I believe it's 4 next week.
So at what point would you be ready to make a hiring decision? A couple of weeks?
Yeah, I would say as soon as we're done all the interviews.
So that would give us time to talk to the association and.
But here you have people coming expecting,
I know.
or at least hoping that there's a job there. And is it fair to them as well?
Yeah, I know, it's really awkward.
Just because you interview doesn't mean you have to hire. That is true.
Yeah, it would be my decision anyways to continue the interview process. It might be an idea to let the interviewee know that there is obviously a elephant in the room, but we continue that and then put that on pause after the interviews are done with and find out what the association thoughts are. Go from there.
Yeah, so sorry, you have this week and you have some next week. So by the end of next week, we have to have had this discussion with Mark and Murray about what the decision is.
I think so.
So we'll get that. I think if you've already interviewed some, I would continue the process of finishing all the interviews. as much as it is. But as long as, what I would suggest is that exactly what Bill's saying is, if the interviewee doesn't mention anything about
Oh,
it,
it's brought up right at the start.
so we if anything, we should at least advise them of
Yeah.
what.
I brought it up right at the very start.
Okay. So we will, so direction to the chief is to continue the interview process, the week of, so that would be the week of July the 2nd would be the week in which we need to provide a decision to the chief. Because that, he's got this week and then next week's the end of the 29th. So we need to have a meeting we would have to have a meeting, either a meeting or an email goes out that says, here's what the association has said. Is the board consistent on what the discussion was at the last meeting? Like, I would hate to call a meeting to come here for 5 seconds. It doesn't make any sense.
We can do an email vote or a phone vote, can't we? Like in lieu of holding, I know I've done that on other boards we've had.
We don't have that provision.
Oh, okay.
So we don't have that provision. That's one of the issues is that unless we're, I guess that's the part where I'm trying to get to us to a point where if we can make a motion that says X, and if something changes, then we'd have to have the meeting. But if we didn't have to have the meeting, we wouldn't. But if the board wants to come here on the week of the 2nd, I can schedule the meeting right now. I just would like some help with kind of the conversation about what we need to do.
Well, I might say then make a motion that if it's agreed to upon with the association that we can delay the hire, then that's what we'll do. But if the association disagrees, then we should have another meeting to discuss how we proceed. But I think everyone here is in agreement that if the association's okay with us delaying the hire till January to find out what the
OCPC?
Yes, decision is, and that's what we do.
Okay, so I will interpret the motion just
Please.
so we
Thank you.
make sure.
I do tend to trip over my words.
So Bill moves that Joan and Trevor have a meeting with the association president and vice as to the hiring process. If it is agreed to by the association that we delay hiring until the OCPC decision is made, that is what the direction will be from the board. Otherwise, a meeting, if not, a meeting will be July the 3rd to reconsider the decision on hiring.
Is that concept with council?
I was gonna say we have a council meeting that night.
No, we don't. Council meeting is 9th. Because
Oh,
it
right,
was
the 9th
pushed
and the
because of AMO.
23rd. That's right. That's right. Neither of you two are going to AMO?
No,
Land is.
so I'm not, no. You're going?
Does that give us enough time to put a notice?
Yes.
Okay.
Lots of notice, lots of time.
But Yolanda couldn't come to a meeting on July the 3rd?
AMO's not till August.
Oh,
The reason we've shifted the meetings is July is because of AMO was in August, so
Oh,
we've shifted
okay.
the meetings.
okay.
Okay? Is everybody clear what that motion was?
Mm-hmm.
Richard, you're okay? Okay, so Bill moved it, Joan seconds it. And just before I call Chief, is that clear?
It is crystal clear.
Okay. All those in favor of that motion? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to the bills and accounts.
I'll move it in my discussion.
So Yolanda moves. Somebody wants to second those? Kathy seconds. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Why were their payments rejected? What happened? You see that?
I've seen that, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Are
I'm just
they
curious.
rejected from the OPP or the RCMP?
It's under office supplies.
It's under office supplies.
It's miscellaneous under there. It'd be like 125 or 100.
125 and 75.
For some reason, they're not accepting our bank transfers,
Oh.
which is fine.
I was curious. I was like,
Donna Stu called me and asked if I knew why that was happening, because it's direct deposit into their
Yeah.
account.
Right.
And I can't
That's what
answer
I
it.
thought.
So
Okay.
she was gonna contact the RCMP and see if she could figure out why that was happening.
Okay.
Because it is money we owe them.
I'm just curious. I've never seen that on any of these
Neither,
things
like, it
before.
was,
Like
it's a
even,
first.
and I was like,
It's a first.
Okay, is there any other questions as regards to those bills and accounts? Okay. Question, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, correspondence, is there anything in correspondence that somebody would like to pull out to talk about? If not, I would take the motion to have the correspondence ordered, read and filed.
I'll make
Yolanda
that
moved
motion.
it, Joan seconds. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so under new business 11.1, Council of the Township of North Huron requests the Wing Police Service exit costs. So I had a discussion with the CAO last night, and I did tell him that it's premature
Oh, yeah. in a big way.
for us to calculate what some of those exit costs is. We could calculate what the base salary disband, like what that stuff is, but there's overtime and bank time and
It's also two different amounts. If they get hired with the OPT, it's 2 weeks with a maximum of 36, I think, or
Yeah.
2 weeks per year.
Yeah.
And if they don't get hired, it's 4 weeks.
yeah,
So it can be 50,000 or 100,000, right?
Yeah.
Those two scenarios.
yeah,
Like, you can't do it
no.
at
So
this point.
So I did say there is some discussion that we'll be working through about, like, we can get the base kind of cost looking like how the calculation is, and then all of a sudden we can do the fine tuning per
But
when we
again,
have bank
depends on
time.
if they're
And
hired or not.
but those calculations can be done simultaneously. Like it's like we can have them both just in case they do and they don't. So we're not spending ounce amount of time, and the calculations are there. So it's not as if we just need to. But I said to them, it's probably not. You're probably not going to see it from this board until at least September, at least. And the numbers that you're going to get will be preliminary until the OCPC decide what they're going to do. And then there's also the discussion about when the OPP has their discussion with the officers about what that looks like. So I've already so we will leave that on. We'll defer that till September. We will re-bring that up in September's meeting. So if I would take a motion to defer that request. Kathy moves, Joan seconds. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, board member inquiries, reports. Is there any? Okay. Don't have a public gallery. So we do have an in-camera session, which the chief has provided, that he has a couple of issues, and the board has to deal with one issue with regards to personnel matters. Thank you, chief. I would take a motion to go in camera. Joan moves that, and Yelena seconds. All those in favor? Carried.